Many teachers, like myself, we entered the vocation of teaching because of our passion for learning and because there was a teacher previously that influenced us. Those previous teachers were innovative and creative about what they did. They went beyond a teacher-centered classroom and they made it come alive. They made it relevant and authentic for us. They understood that nobody's inspired by a 30-minute lecture followed by a worksheet to prepare you for a test. So, inspired, we go off to college. We learn as much as we can about teaching and education. When we finish, we leave and we enter our own classrooms with a clean slate of what we think teaching is and what it should be. Then, I look around at my colleagues, and I notice those slates are no longer clean. They've been scribbled on by years of experience and interactions. Unfortunately, what is now written on those slates is not very promising. That pure, authentic love for learning that attracted them to teaching, it no longer exists. We've industrialized education to the point that we no longer provide our students with relevant application and authentic engagement. We're now schooling instead of teaching and learning. Our public education systems are so focused on passing a standardized test and teaching to that test that we've lost sight of what it's all about. We've lost sight of that pure, unadulterated passion for learning. Our schools have this overwhelming emphasis on it, but we need to evolve. Okay? Our public education systems that were once the model for the world, we're now playing catch-up to all these countries around the world. Our students are no longer mastering these essential skills. They're no longer developing cultural literacy. And even though we have a research community that the world envies, our teachers sit in the classroom and dismiss the research that's put out. They call it impractical. It's detached. It's not going to work. It's in theory only. But what I call for is an evolution of our education system. We've got to evolve to meet the needs of our students. As our world becomes more interconnected because of technology, because of our economies, because of immigration, teachers not only have a professional obligation, but a moral obligation to prepare our students for this global society. We have to react to what is going on around them and meet their needs. It makes me think about a quote by Henry Brooks Adams. A teacher affects eternity. He may not know how far-reaching that influence is. So with that responsibility, we as teachers have to take the next step in education to take our pedagogical approach to the next level. We've got to prepare our students to develop these skills and to be inspired. And it's not going to happen by doing worksheets and tests over and over. So imagine this. You have chemistry students, and you're teaching them about common boiling points of liquids. So I ask, what is the boiling point of water? And my students are going to give me the textbook answer of 100 degrees Celsius, to which I would probably respond, not necessarily true. As we change in elevation and we change in altitude, that atmospheric pressure is going to change, so the boiling point will be a little different in various locations. Previously, your students had to trust you. They had to take your word for it. They had to trust the words on a page. But now, we can collaborate with people around the world where they can actually watch students in Germany. They can watch students in Brazil, in Australia. They can watch them boil these liquids, and they can actually see that the boiling point is different. It makes it come alive. It makes it real for them. So I did similar collaborations like that. I had my students connect through Google Hangouts and things like that, where they did boiling points to compare. They did the World Moon Project. They went out and observed the patterns of the moon. They recorded those observations. They shared them with students around the world. We had collaborations in Mexico City, in Rio de Janeiro. We had one in Venezuela, in Germany, in Australia, India, and China. So we're recording these observations of the moon, the pattern, and then the students share them with each other so they can look at these patterns from different perspectives. And then they can discuss things about, what do these patterns tell me? And then I had also project-based learning that I implemented. My students worked with students in Germany to build a roller coaster so they could observe motion and energy. They worked with students in Mexico to build lunar land rovers, again, to analyze motion and things like that. And then my favorite, I had a collaboration with students in the Dominican where we approached this project-based stuff. We wanted to make it meaningful, not only to their local community, but to a global community. So they started talking about the big issues. They have to talk about culturally what is important, and they decided to test water purity. It's a big issue, not only in the Dominican, but in Mexico and around the world. So they discussed what kinds of things will affect water purity. Then they had to decide, how do I test it? And then they took it one step further. They designed their own water purification system that was low cost and 3D printed. Because I have three 3D printers in my classroom. So they designed these water filters, low cost, and then we designed a whole bunch of them and we mailed them off. So that way the students in Mexico and the Dominican had them. So what I'm saying is, we have to make things real and authentic for our students. We want to take it to the next level. Our education system has to evolve. So why project-based learning? Well, the research supports project-based learning. In 2012, there were 2 schools in Britain. One used traditional style of lecture, the other used project-based learning. And they implemented this for 3 years. And then they compared the 2 schools. The project-based learning school in Britain outperformed the traditional school in all of their standardized tests. They had 3 times as many students pass that test. Similarly, in my classroom, I've been using this for 3 years. I started when I entered my PhD program at Texas Tech. So I've been doing this for 3 years in my classroom as well. And when you compare my students to the state average on passing those STAR tests, the state average is 70%. My students took the physics EOC for the 1 year that it was out, and I had 100% of my students pass. Our school has about 95% of our students pass the state standardized tests. So when you compare us to the state, our students are learning the content better because it's not just rote memorization, it's application, it's meaningful. They internalize it. And then when you compare me to local colleagues, we all share benchmarks so that we can learn from the data. Okay? When you compare my students' benchmark grades from the pre-test to the post-test, my students have a significantly larger increase in the correct answers that they get on that post-test. My students have outperformed my colleagues by about 15 points. So what I'm saying is we need to prepare our students by taking it to the next level. We have to go beyond that teacher-centered learning, and we have to make it student-centered. And we do that by engaging our students in things that are relevant and meaningful to them. It'll prepare them by developing those essential skills so that they can solve problems that are about to be in their lives. They're going to be the future. They have to solve those problems. We want them to develop skills like global awareness, cultural competencies, problem-solving skills, communication, teamwork. And they're going to do that through these types of collaborations when you bring in outside perspectives, so that way it's not just a cultural bubble that's isolated by people that are similar to them.